Chapter 2 of Half Hours with the Idiot. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kathleen. Half Hours with the Idiot by John Kendrick Bangs. As to the fair sex. I observe with pain, said the Idiot, as he placed the bibliomaniac's pat of butter under his top waffle, that there is a more or less acrimonious dispute going on as to the propriety of admitting women to the Hall of Fame. The immortals already seem to think that immortality belongs exclusively to the male order of human beings, and that the word is really immortality, and declined to provide even a strap for the ladies to hang on in the cars leading to the everlasting heights. All of which causes me to rejoice that I am not an immortal myself. If the one durable joy in life, the joy that neither crocks nor fades, association with the fair sex, a diversion which age cannot wither, nor custom stale its infinite variety, is something an immortal must get along without, it's me for the tall timbers of fameless existence. I rejoice that I am but a plain, common garden, everyday mortal thing, ready for shipment FOB, for the last terminal station on the road to that well-known Irish settlement, Oblivion. I didn't know that you were such an admirer of the fair sex, Mr. Idiot, said the doctor. Many years' residence in a refined home for single gentlemen like this would seem to indicate that the allurements of feminine society were not for you. Quite the contrary, said the Idiot. It proves rather my interest in the fair sex as a whole. If I had specialized sufficiently upon one single blessed damozel with pink cheeks, snappy brown eyes, and a pompadour that might strike a soaring lark as the most desirable nest in the world, to ask her to share my lot and go halves with me in an investment in the bonds of matrimony, it might have been said, I even hope it would have been said, that the allurements of feminine society were not for me. Marriage, my dear doctor, is no symptom that a man is interested in women. It is merely evidence of the irresistible attraction of one person for another. It's like sampling a box of candy. You may find the sample extremely pleasing and gobble it up ferociously, but if you were to gobble up the whole box with equal voracity it might prove hateful to you. In my case, I confess that I am so deeply interested in the whole box of tricks that it is the sample I fight shy of, and I have remained single all these years because my heart is no miserable little 1-horsepower affair that beats only for one single individual, but a 90,000,000 horsepower dynamo that whirls madly around, day and night, on time and overtime, on behalf of all. I could not possibly bring myself to love only one pair of blue eyes to the utter exclusion of black, brown, or gray. Nor can I be sure that if in some moment of weakness I were to tie up irrevocably to a pair of black eyes, somewhere some day with the moon just right, and certain psychological conditions wholly propitious, a pair of coruscating brown beads set between two roguish eyebrows would labor in vain to win a curve of interest from my ascetic upper lip. To put it in the brief form of a cable dispatch, rather than in magazine language at 15 cents a word, I love 'em all, blonde, brunette, or in between. In every maid I see a queen, as Shakespeare would have said if he had thought of it. That's rather promiscuous, isn't it? Asked the bibliomaniac. No, it's just playing safe, Mr. Bib, said the Idiot. It's like a man with $1,000,000 to invest. It isn't considered quite prudent for him to put every red cent of that million into one single stock. If he put his whole million into U.S. Hot Air Preferred at 97.7/8, for instance, and some day Hot Air became so cheap that the bottom dropped out of the market and the stock fell to 8.3/8, that man would practically be a busted community. But if, like a true sage, he divided his little million up into 20 $50,000 lots, and put each lot into some separate stock or bond, the general average would probably maintain itself somewhere around par whether the tariff on lyonnaise potatoes was removed or not. So it is with my affections. If I could invest them in some such way as that I might have to move out of here and seek some pleasant little domestic Eden where matrimony is not frowned upon. I rather guess you would have to move out of here, sniffed Mrs. Pedagogy, the landlady. I might be willing to forgo my rules and take somebody in here with one wife, but when a man talks about having 20, Why, I am almost disposed to give you notice now, Mr. Idiot. Don't you worry your kindly soul about me on that score, Mrs. Pedagog," smiled the Idiot. "With ostrich feathers at $75 a plume, and real Connecticut sealskin coats made of Angora plush going at $98, and any old kind of falal selling in the open market at $150 per frill, there is no danger of my startling this company by bringing home one bride, much less 20. I was only speculating upon a theoretical ideal of matrimony, a sort of e pluribus unum arrangement which holds much speculative charm, but which in practice would undoubtedly land a man in jail." "I had no idea that any of my boarders could ever bring themselves to advance a single word in favor of polygamy," said the landlady sternly. "Nor I," said the Idiot. "I don't believe even Mr. Bib here would advocate anything of that sort. I was merely trying to make clear to the doctor, my dear lady, why I have never attempted to make some woman happy for a week and a martyr for the rest of time. It is due to my deep admiration for the whole feminine sex and not, as he seemed to think, to a dislike of feminine society. The trace of polygamy which you seem to find in my discourse is purely academic, and it is clear to me that you have quite misunderstood my scheme. A true marriage, one of those absolutely indestructible companionships that we read about in poetry, involves so many more things than any ordinary human being is really capable of, that one who thinks about the matter at all cannot resist the temptation to speculate on how things might be if they were different. The active man of affairs these busy times needs many diverse things in the way of companionship. He needs a helpmate along so many different lines that no single daughter of Eve can reasonably hope to supply them all. For example, if a man marries a woman who is deeply interested in Ibsen and Bernard Shaw abroad, and deep thinkers like William J. Bryan and Thomas Riley Marshall at home, she no doubt makes him ecstatically happy in those solemn moments when his mind wishes to grapple understandingly with the infinite. But suppose that poor chap comes home some night worn to a frazzle with the worries and complications of his business affairs, his spirit fairly yearning for something fluffy and intellectually completely restful. Do you suppose for a moment that he is going to be lifted out of the morass of his woe by a conversation with that lady of his on the subject of the inestimable infinitude of the protoplasmic suffragette as outlined by Professor Sophocles J. Plato in the latest issue of the South American Review? Not he, my dear Mrs. Pedagog. What he wants on that occasion is somebody to sit alongside of him while he pulls away on his old briar-wood pipe, holding his tired little Patty in her soft right hand, while she twitters forth some George Ade's latest fable on the flipper that flapped, or something else equally diverting. The reverse of the picture is equally true. If there is anything in the world that drives a man to despair, it is to have to listen to 5 o'clock tea gabble when he happens to be in a mood for the Alexander Hamilton or Vice President Marshall style of discourse. The facts are the same in both cases. The Bernard Shaw lady is a delight to the heart and soul in his Bernard Shaw moods. The George Ade lady is a source of unalloyed bliss in a George Ade mood, but they don't reverse readily, and in most cases they can't reverse at all. Then there are other equally baffling complications along other lines. A man may be crazy about poetry, and he falls in love, as he supposes, with a dainty little creature in gold-rimmed eyeglasses, who writes the most exquisite lyrics, simply because he thinks at the moment that those lyrics are going to make his life just one sweet song after another. He marries the little songbird, and then what happens? Never having married a canary, I don't know, said the landlady with a glance at her husband. Well, I'll tell you, said the Idiot. He has a honeymoon of lovely images. He feels like a colt put out to pasture on the slopes of Parnassus. Life runs along with the lilt of a patter song, and then, to indulge in a joke worthy of the palmiest days of London punch, he comes out of patter song. There dawns a day when he is full chock-a-block up to his neck with poetry, and the inner man craves the reinforcement of the kind of flapjacks his mother used to make. One good waffle would please him more than 67 sonnets on the subject of aspiration. Nothing short of a lustrous, smoking, gleaming stack of fresh buckwheats can hold him on the pinnacle of joy, and the lovely little lyrist, to whom he has committed himself, his destinies, and all that he has, under a vow for life, hies herself singing to the kitchen, mixes the necessary amount of concrete, serves the resulting dishes at the breakfast table, and gloom Gloom unmitigated falls upon that house. After eating 2 of her cakes, poor old hubby begins to feel as if he had swallowed the cornerstone of a Carnegie library. That lyric touch that Herrick might have envied and Tennyson have viewed with professional alarm has produced a buckwheat cake of such impenetrable density that the Navy Department, if it only knew about it, would joyously grant her the contract for furnishing the armor plate for the new super dreadnoughts we are about to build, so as to prepare for peace after Germany gets through with us. While eating those cakes the victim speculates on that old problem: is suicide a sin? A cloud rises upon the horizon of his joy, and without intending any harm whatsoever, his mind involuntarily reverts to another little lady he once knew, who, while she couldn't tell the difference between a sonnet and a cabriolet, and had a dim notion, when she heard people speaking of Keats, that Keats were some sort of a shellfish found on the rocks of the Hebrides at low tide, and much relished by the natives, could yet put together a tea biscuit so delicately tenuous of character that it melted in the mouth like a flake of snow on the smokestack of a Pittsburgh blast furnace. Thus an apparently secure joy loses its keen edge, and without anybody being really to blame, life becomes thenceforward, very gradually, but none the less surely, a mere test of endurance, a domestic marathon which must be run to the end, unless the runners collapse before reaching the finish. For both parties, snapped the landlady, pursing her lips severely. You needn't think that the men are the only ones to suffer. Don't you fool yourself on that point. Oh, indeed I don't, Mrs. Pedagog, said the Idiot. It's just as bad for the woman as for the man, sometimes a little worse. For there is no denying that women are after all more chameleonic, capable of a greater variety of emotions than men are. A man may find several women in one. In fact, he generally does. It is her frequent unlikeness to herself that constitutes the chief charm of some women. Take my friend Spink's wife, for instance. She's the most exacting Puritan at home that you ever met. Poor Spinksy has to toe a straight mark for at least 16 hours out of every 24. Mrs. Spinks rules him with a rod of iron. But when that little Puritan goes to a club dance, well, believe me, she is the snappiest eyed, most flirtatious little tangoer in 97 counties. Sundays in church she is the demurest bit of sartorial impressiveness in sight, but at the bridge table you want to keep your eyes wide open all the time lest your comfortable little balance at the bank be suddenly transformed into a howling overdraft. I should say that on general principles Mrs. Spinks is not less than 9 or 10 women, all rolled into one: Joan of Arc, Desdemona, Lucretia Borgia, Cleopatra, Xantippe, Juliet, Mrs. Pankhurst, Eve, and the late Carrie Nation. But Spinks, poor old Spinksy, there's no infinite variety about him. At most Spinks is only 2 men, Mr. Henpeck at home, and Mr. Overworked when he gets out. I suppose from all this nonsense, said the landlady, that your matrimonial ideal would be found in a household where a man rejoiced in the possession of a dozen wives, one frivolous little Hebe for his joyous moods, one Juno-esque thundercloud for serious emergencies, one capable seamstress to keep his buttons sewed on, one first-class housekeeper to look after his domestic arrangements, one suffragette to talk politics to, one blue stocking for literary companionship, one highly recommended cook to preside over his kitchen, one musical wife to bang on the piano all day, one athletic girl for outdoor consumption, and a plain, common garden giggler to laugh at his jokes. I think I could be true to such a household, madam, said the Idiot, but please don't misunderstand me. I am not advocating such a scheme. I am only saying that since such a scheme is impossible under modern conditions, I think it is the best thing that ever happened to my wife that she and I never met. Do you think a household of that sort would be satisfied with you? Asked the Bibliomaniac. The chances are 6 to 1 that it wouldn't be, said the Idiot. I'd probably get along gloriously with Hebe and the giggler, but I guess the others would stand a fair show of finding marriage a failure. Wherefore am I wedded only to my fancies, content that my days should not be subjected to the strain of trying to be all things to one woman, preferring as I do to remain one thing to all women instead, their devoted admirer and willing slave. Well, to come back to the immortals, said the doctor. You don't really think, do you, that we have any women immortals? "Of course I do," replied the Idiot. "The world is full of them, and always has been." Mr. Brief, the lawyer, tapped his forehead significantly. "I'm afraid that screw has come loose again, doctor," he said. "Looks that way," said the doctor, "but we'll tighten it up again in a jiffy." He paused a moment and then resumed. "Well, Mr. Idiot," he said, "of course our ideas may differ on the subject of what makes an immortal. Now, I should say that it is by their fruits that ye shall know them." "A highly original remark," observed the Idiot, with a grin. "That aside," said the doctor, coolly, "let's take up, for purposes of discussion, a few standards. In music, Wagner was an immortal, and produced his great trilogy. In poetry, Milton was an immortal, and produced Paradise Lost. In the drama, Shakespeare was an immortal, and produced Hamlet. And, coming down to our own time, let us grant the obvious fact that Edison is headed toward immortality because of his wizardry in electricity." "Sure thing," said the Idiot. "It is good to have you grant all I say so readily," said the doctor. "Now then, let me ask you where, in all history, you find four women who in the matter of their achievement, in the demonstrated fruits of their labors, even measurably approached any one of these four I have mentioned." "Why, doctor," grinned the Idiot, "why ask me to steal candy from a baby? Why suggest that I try to drive a tack with a sledgehammer, or cut a mold of currant jelly with the whirring teeth of a buzz saw?" "Sparring for time as usual," cried the doctor triumphantly. "You can't name one, and are simply trying to asphyxiate us with that peculiar variety of natural gas for which you have long been famous." "I'll fill the roster with examples if you'll sit and listen," said the Idiot. "I can match every male genius that ever lived from Noah down to Josephus Daniels with a woman whose product was of equal, if not even greater value. Begin where you please, in any century before or since the flood, and I'll be your huckleberry. Wagner, Milton, Cromwell, Roosevelt, Secretary Daniels, Kaiser Wilhelm, Methuselah, I don't care who or what he is, I'll match him." "All right," said the doctor. "Suppose we begin low with that trifling little frivoler in literature, William Shakespeare." "Good!" cried the Idiot. "He'll do. I'll just mark him off with Mrs. Shakespeare." "What?" chuckled the doctor. "Anne Hathaway?" "No," said the Idiot, "not Anne Hathaway, but Shakespeare's mother." "Oh, tush!" ejaculated the Bibliomaniac impatiently. "What rot! A wholly unknown provincial person of whom the world knows about as much as a beetle knows about Mars. What on earth did she ever produce?" "Shakespeare," said the Idiot, in an impressive basso profundo tone that echoed through the room like a low rumble of thunder, and a silence fell upon that table so deep, so abysmally still, that one could almost hear the snowflakes falling upon the trolley tracks 16 blocks away. End of As to the Fair Sex,